What's up, family? It is Caden with Urban Finance. Today I'm hit with my boy Rahkim Sabree, who is a TEDx speaker, a best-selling author, and a financial coach. And so, Rahkim, can you just tell the folks a little bit about yourself and how you got into this
Definitely.
industry?
Like you said, my name is Rahkim Sabree. I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. Um, I am passionate about financial empowerment, really empowerment as a whole, but financial empowerment specifically. And I got into the space about 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago, when I started working as a part-time teller at 21. Um, Spent 6 months in that role before I experienced my first jump into the next position full time. And on my journey through these last 10 years, I've learned a lot about how people manage their money or mismanage their money. And I've become inspired not only to learn to better my position financially, but to better the position of other people as I continue to accomplish.
Nice, awesome. And so you have a book called Financially Irresponsible. And I would say there are definitely some financially irresponsible strategies in there, and I absolutely love them. One of the things that I said after reading your book is that this was one of the books on personal finance that I really felt had some fresh ideas in it. And so one of those fresh ideas was your strategy around how to boost your credit score. And so, can you share with us some of your financially irresponsible ways to increase your credit score? It can be responsible as well, but I know you had some amazing ideas in there.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a huge compliment to me. And it's not the first time that I've heard it. People tend to regurgitate traditionalist views on personal finance, and finance is not a glove that fits all. So you kind of have to learn the rules and then make those rules work for you. So what you're referring to in the book, I talk about maintaining a very low utilization, and I accomplished that by having access to a large amount of credit. And what that looks like is that's a large amount of credit within one credit card, but it's also a large amount of credit across multiple credit cards. So the average American has about three credit cards. I have three times that amount. I think right now I probably have around 10
Oh, wow.
different credit cards. And I think the lowest limit on a credit card that I have is about $5,000.
Mm.
So when you look at what makes up your FICO score, and what is the weighting, your payment history, of course, is going to be a huge influencing factor. But your utilization is also a huge influencing factor. And so generally, it's a good rule of thumb to keep your credit utilization below 30%. 30% looks different based off of what the total number of credit available to you is. And
Mm.
so when I was able to identify that as kind of like the credit hack, right? I realized that the higher limits I had, the higher balances that I could carry while maintaining that utilization, that low utilization under 30%. So basically the answer to your question is the credit hack, the credit tip, responsible or irresponsible, is get access to more credit.
Mm. So, tell the folks, how much credit do you actually have access to right now?
Uh, so I have access to over $100,000 in credit right now.
Mm. So, you can go buy a home on credit if you wanted to.
I could a home, a car.
The other thing that I thought was super interesting in, I guess, your credit section of your book, and because the book deals with a bunch of different financial literacy issues, which we'll talk about as well. But I thought some of the credit stuff was pretty cool and something that I haven't seen before, to be quite frank about it. So one of the things, and let me know if I'm misquoting your book, is that you don't pay your bills on time to improve your credit.
Um, so there's an order of operations when it comes to how I allocate my funds. And first and foremost, I'm a hardcore pay yourself first guy. So that's a
Mm.
non-negotiable discipline that I have. If it comes down to me paying a bill versus me paying myself first, well, I'm gonna pay myself first, and that bill's gonna be late.
Wow.
So the order of operations goes as follows. I'm paying myself first. I'm paying bills that impact my credit. So that's credit cards, that's mortgage, that's car loan. And then I'm paying bills that don't impact my credit. So that's like electricity, gas, anything that falls into that category. And usually, and like I said, it's important to know the rules, right? So within a credit space, you can, let's say your payment is due on the 15th on a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
You missed the 15th, the credit card company is likely going to charge you a fee for being late. So you'll be penalized, but you have 30 days from the date that your credit is due before it counts as a negative reporting on your credit report. So let's say that, like I said, it comes down to me paying myself first and me paying my American Express on the 15th. I know that I'm going to get a paycheck on the 18th. I'm going to pay myself first. American Express is going to wait. They're going to hit me with whatever their fee is. I'm going to get paid 3 days later, and I'm going to take, whatever portion of my money that I can, prioritize and pay off American Express. Now, I don't do that often. And like I said, the order of operations includes paying bills that impact my credit before paying bills that don't.
Mm-hmm.
So the likelihood of me not paying Amex versus paying like my phone bill or the gas bill or whatever is not very high. But because that is an infrequent type of interaction, I'm very comfortable going to Amex and saying, hey, I missed paying the bill by a day or by 2 days. I have a flawless payment history. Do you guys mind giving me the feedback? And a lot of times, especially if it's the first time, you'll get that feedback.
Awesome. I like that. And it's something that I think a lot of people may not even be familiar with is the time frame, the window of opportunity with whether it's a credit card or a phone bill per se, which one affects your credit and which one affects your credit within how many days. And knowing those numbers, like you say, could help you to optimize your payment strategy to know, well, okay, I can have 30 days before my phone bill even affects my credit of paying it late, as opposed to Amex. Let's say maybe they hit me in 15 days or something like that. And so just having that foreknowledge that you have, I thought that was super interesting as a strategy for those who do not probably have the funds on hand to hit all of their bills, to just know that you can not have the money and still optimize your bill in a way that your credit score is going up while being late on some bills and a little later on others. And so I thought that was really solid. One of the other things we talked about in introduction, and I just love all of the content that you've put out there. I know you have written a ton of articles. You've done, like I said, a TEDx talk. And so how did you get yourself out there to speak on TEDx and to do all these articles for these big newspapers and things like that? And feel free to name some of them. But how did you get that ball rolling that people see you as a subject matter expert on this topic?
Yeah, so I think it starts first with kind of a general self-awareness, right? So you gotta determine in your mind that this is something that you want. And I tell people all the time, I'm definitely an introvert. So doing podcasts, being interviewed, doing a TED talk, putting myself out there, as you put it, is not natural to me. It's something that, in the beginning took a lot of effort. I'm also somebody who does not like rejection. I'm somebody who, and I think a lot of people can relate to the struggles of, fear and fear paralysis. But what I've been able to do, really kind of echoing through all the work, personal and professional, is take that fear or take those hard lessons and use it to my advantage. So if I could just go back to the last point where we're talking about strategies around paying late, it's the first time that I've ever articulated this, but I grew up in a poverty environment. And so I remember seeing instances where my mom would pay like half the Con Ed bill. Con Ed is like the electricity growing up in New York. It's like who do we have? EverSource. Con Ed is like EverSource in New York. And so half of the Con Ed bill would keep the lights on, but there was still a balance due, right? So you put two and two together and you realize, wait a second, you can put something towards the bill, but not pay the whole bill so that you can stretch your money to pay other bills. And so taking it out of the context of poverty and putting it into a context of what is benefiting you in the greatest way financially, right? Whether that's investing or saving, or budgeting, what have you. I've been able to take that lesson and use it in a way that's been beneficial to me. Same thing with my being an introvert, right? Same thing with my being fearful. I identified that I had a message that I wanted to share, a message that was worth sharing. And I said, you know what? I want to get into a space not only where I can embark on entrepreneurship, but also where I can make a difference. I can make a difference with my experiences, with my story, my voice. And so getting over the fear required practice, right? Getting into environments where I'm forced to talk, I'm forced to present, and interacting with different audiences of different levels. So I think the first time that I started doing presentations was with young people, less than high school age, right? And they're going to be very critical sometimes and very honest other times.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yeah. And I just want to shout out Brandon Frame and Black Man Can. Brandon actually gave me my first opportunities to speak. And really it's kind of based off of volunteer. So there was no like pay involved, but I had the opportunity to go to different places and participate in his summits by talking about my first published book, Mentorship, the Playbook, and what is mentorship, and getting in kind of a cadence around talking about things that I knew I had a subject matter expertise around, but how do I translate that in an engaging way with an audience that is going to be very frank with you about how they feel? So when I pivoted my strategy from talking about mentoring to talking about personal finance specifically, I had already built up those muscles and saying, okay, I feel comfortable enough getting in front of an audience. I know that more times than not, I know more on this topic than most people who I'm going to be presenting to. And for the individuals that do know more than me, well, we can have an engaging conversation, right? So I can't lose. Now, leading up to TED, that was, I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. That was really an exercise in manifestation. The year before I did my TED Talk, I decided that I wanted to establish credibility in the speaking circles as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And how do you do that, right? Besides TED, TED is like the highest form of credibility there is for a speaker. And so I wrote it down as a goal. And I think that's important to underscore there. First, self-awareness. Second is, writing it down as a goal, and then taking steps, actionable steps towards the accomplishment of that goal. I reached out. First of all, I did research on how do you get involved with TED? Like, what's the difference between TED, the TED conference, and TEDx? Okay, where is the closest local TEDx to me? Found out that there was one in Hartford. So then I reached out to the organizers and I'm like, hey, how do I get involved with this? And they told me that I had to apply and keep checking the website, what have you. So I said, I'm gonna do one better. I went on their Facebook page, I went on their Instagram page, I went on their Twitter page. I turned on post notifications so that as soon as they announced that applications would open, I would know. Once I turned on the post notifications and I got word that applications were open, I applied. And I feel like, the universe conspires to make the things that you want to have happen. If you are determined that you want that thing to happen. So, following like this order of operations, self-awareness, determining that this is something that I want to do, creating a plan, writing it down, taking actionable steps towards accomplishing that plan. So reaching out, finding out what's involved and getting in that space. And then, ultimately you got to have a good talk. So, originally when I pitched TED, I was going to talk about the relationship between homelessness and financial education, because I had started a nonprofit that focused on homelessness. But my talk morphed as I kind of got through the different stages of their vetting process. And the biggest takeaway for me with TED is that you're not delivering a motivational talk. You're sharing an idea. Actually, that's their theme. Idea is worth sharing. And so, how do I take my story and create an idea that's worth sharing around that story? And at the time, I was also working on Financially Irresponsible, so there were just definitely intersecting synergies there. And then I get to game day, right? Showtime. I'm standing behind stage, they're getting ready to call me out, and I'm freaking out. Like, I could feel like my heart in my throat. And the organizer who was backstage with me said, At this point, nothing else matters. Go out there and do the best that you can. That you've gotten this far, right? Like you are on the TED stage. And that calmed me down a little bit. But when I got on stage, I think there was maybe two instances where I forgot my entire talk. Um, and I'm just like, no, 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 like this can't happen right now.
That
And I'm
couldn't be.
looking at the audience and I'm seeing all the eyes and I'm seeing the light and I'm seeing the clock tick down. And I'm just like, I got to get it back. I got to get it back. And so fortunately I did. And most people watching the talk won't even realize that happened. But inside, I was definitely freaking out. So that's how I got on TED. And then with regard to the publications, I think it was just kind of like uh, I don't want to say logical succession, but just me pushing forward, right?
Mhm.
Keeping fanning the flames around what is my passion, what is my success. I just published a book. I just did the TED Talk. I started investing in courses that taught me how to pitch publications.
Mm.
And then once I kind of got the general knowledge around what that looks like, I started pitching them. Some were successful, some were not successful. Some, people might consider luck. The first publication that I actually wrote for, first large publication that I actually wrote for, was the Griot,
Mm. I love
and I landed that through Twitter. Their managing editor had tweeted during the pandemic, if anybody's looking for extra money, you can pitch me whatever, and he included his email.
So can I
Somebody
ask
on my
you a
top,
question? I don't mean to cut off your train of thought. And so when
yeah,
you're pitching publications, do you come to them with like a fully written article, or is it like the idea of this is the article that I want to pitch? Like, what is the strategy behind pitching publications?
yeah, it depends on the publication. So some publications will prefer that the article is completely written. They want to know that the and every publication this is going to be true. They want to know that you're writing for them, nothing that was published somewhere else, and that you are familiar with their audience. So if I could use an example, I also write for Entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Entrepreneur's audience is going to be very different than the Griot.
Mhm.
Whereas in the Griot, I might lean into my Blackness, right? I'm talking around the Black experience relating to personal finance. With Entrepreneur, their audience is very diverse and mostly business leaders and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk from the lens of an entrepreneur or somebody who's giving thought leadership within the same niche, but to a different audience. So the answer to your question is it depends on the publication. Anybody looking to pitch a large publication needs to do research on the publication to find out what kind of stories they promote. But also, you know, generally, I would say maybe 85% of the time, you're just pitching ideas. If the editor responds to you, they'll let you know that they like the idea, or they'll let you know how to tweak the idea, and then you'll write the article from that point.
So one of the things that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but it seems like you're not the type of person to procrastinate very much. It's between pitching publications, writing your book. I want to write a book someday, but I haven't started putting pen to paper. A lot of people have these big ideas of this is what I want to do, this is how I want to be, and it's hard for them to get that initial start, or it's hard for them to really even hit the treadmill and just keep running and going and progressing in the direction that they would like to go. You've already written at least two books that I know about, have a ton of publications out there, did TEDx speaking, speak at a ton of on podcasts and things of that nature. And so I guess, where do you get the fire, the motivation, the confidence to just put yourself out there and continue to progress forward? Because I know there are people out there that may not want to do financial literacy per se, but they're passionate about something, but keep getting stuck and keep feeling like they're not progressing towards their goals. So can you talk about that, the mentality, the idea of what that feels like for someone that's going through the process? Because I know sometimes it looks rosy, like it just looks like everything is falling in line, but a lot of times that's not actually how it is for the person that is actually accomplishing all they're accomplishing. So you mind speaking on that experience?
Yeah, sure. So two things kind of popped in my head as you were talking. The first is that I've started many more things than people know about. So I don't think it's an issue. I don't think that I am immune to procrastination. In
Mhm.
fact, I'm a huge procrastinator. But I am somebody who is very actionable. So I start a lot of things, and some of those things I don't finish. Um, but a lot of those things I do finish. And I guess your question is around what gets me across the finish line, and
Mhm.
really, I think that that is building off of the steam that I've already created, right? Like there's momentum in that direction. I've accomplished this. And so, like the number one question that I get is, well, what's next? And I'm
Mhm.
just like, I don't know. Like I have the, but I make those decisions kind of based off of what my audience's engagement is too. I know that I'm passionate about adding value. So I'm thinking about how can I add value? How can I continue to add value? And why should people listen to me? Um, I think I think when you take your ego out of the equation and really kind of focus on what is it that the people that you are trying to talk to want to hear, that's where you kind of find your sweet spot. Um, in the beginning, I don't know that I believe that people wanted to listen to me, or that I had any reason for people to want to listen to me. And now that I have all these brands associated with my name, it's kind of like now I'm just like putting stuff out there. I'm like, all right, cool. Like people are listening to me. I got their attention. Like, let me make a difference. Empowerment is the answer to your question. What is it? What is it in me that allows for me to put myself out there? That allows for me to be transparent and vulnerable. That allows for me to feel confident. It's empowerment. I have this abundance mindset. I believe in myself 100%. If there's something that I want to accomplish, then it's not a matter of whether or not I can accomplish it. It's a matter of, how do I accomplish it? And so, some of the factors that go into that outside of my upbringing and what is internal to me include the people that I surround myself with, the materials that I consume, the materials that I refuse to consume, right? So like I'm not a big TV watcher. I don't like watching reality stuff. I don't like watching.
Mhm.
I really don't like watching the news, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
I'm very careful about what I follow on social media. Very intentional about, like I said, what I consume, what I contribute to. And so, with that, if you are kind of like curating a very progressive and very positive energy cycle around you, and you have people that are feeding into that, it's kind of hard to fail, right? Because like if I don't put anything out there, people are gonna start looking for me. They're gonna be like, uh, Rakim, what's next? Rakim, what are you doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so for me, like knowing that I'm making a difference also drives me forward. And feeling charged to make a difference definitely drives me forward.
No, that's awesome, man. And so, who would you say is your target audience? Like, who do you think is your main target audience? Whether it's for, I know some of the writings may be based on where that publication's target audience, but I know you do financial coaching. So, as far as that goes, and as well as your book, even, who do you target? Who do you say is your target audience?
So ideally, anybody that would listen to me is my target. But I think my targets change depending on like what hat I'm wearing.
Mm,
So I was very intentional with financially irresponsible and spelling out that the audience that I was writing for was the audience that looks like me, that can relate to my experiences. There are a lot of financial literacy books out there that are not geared towards Black and Brown people specifically. It's
mhm,
just kind of like generalist information. But Black and Brown people are consuming it like at a rapid rate. You ask, five random Black men, what's the most impactful financial literacy book that they read, and they're probably going to say Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
mhm,
And so when I wrote Financially Irresponsible, my goal, and I articulated this goal, was that I want Financially Irresponsible to have the same impact on other people that Rich Dad Poor Dad had on me.
mm,
Um, when it comes to coaching, though, and really around a lot of the content that I put out there on social media, entrepreneurs, business leaders, people who have a mindset that speaks to like getting up and getting it right. People who are not afraid to invest in themselves, people who are looking for guidance, right, and looking for structure in bringing their dreams to life, if you will. So they definitely don't have to be where I am in terms of I need to produce, I need to produce, I need to produce, but they need to be somebody who wants to take action, somebody who's actionable, somebody who's coachable. Because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
True.
And so I don't spend a lot of time and energy on people that I have to convince of the value that I provide. Because you can find that on Google. Like I'm not interviewing.
Mm.
Um, so I, I think that's definitely a niched audience. Um, and in terms of like ideally, like in a perfect world, who would my customer be? It would be somebody that looks like me, that experiences like me. But I'm not going to not accept money from somebody that doesn't look like me, because you know what I'm saying? Like everybody can benefit from financial coaching.
Everyone is welcome, especially with the book. Go out and get the book, Financially Irresponsible, regardless to the color of your skin.
Right.
but but no, I think that's a beautiful thing. Like this channel. This channel is for everyone. Anyone that's living in an urban environment, especially since the channel is called Urban Finance. But I definitely had people that looked like me in mind when I created Urban Finance, the channel, the brand. And so I guess another question I would say is, where do you feel like Black and Brown people are on this financial literacy journey? And because today, as opposed to 10 years from now, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, let's say, because I've spoken to a lot of older people who have had success, and they really felt during their times like Black people didn't care about a lot of, and I'll say some, don't mean to generalize people like that, but some Black people wasn't necessarily focused on financial literacy. Now, I do feel like that is changing a little. But I guess I wanted to hear from you. Where do you feel like the culture is right now in relationship to financial literacy?
Yeah, so I like this question, and it's not the first time that I've been asked this question, but I'm going to answer it a little bit differently. When I hear people make reference to like the culture, I know what they're asking me, but I'm also conscious of the fact that the culture is fragmented, right? Like there is no one culture.
Hmm.
It depends on a lot of different things. There is excuse me, there is definitely a Black elite, right? There is definitely a Black segment of our overall population in this country that have never experienced poverty, that are very educated, that have known wealth, probably for multiple generations.
Hmm.
And with that, financial literacy is like breathing to them.
Hmm.
um but the culture that is promoted through the media, right? Mainstream hip hop culture, if you will, um, they're becoming more woke when it comes to financial literacy. Financial literacy is cool. You have rappers, you have athletes, you have major influencers talking about financial literacy, or pieces that make up financial literacy, right? Like, Meek Mill posted about Coinbase IPO a couple of weeks ago, and there's a whole bunch of joking going on in the Twitter Spaces around how it tanked after he made that tweet. But to hear like a rapper like Meek Mill talk about stocks, that's a big deal. And so now you have a lot of young people who subscribe to his music, maybe the lifestyle that he promotes, and they're wanting to get involved with stocks. And so there's definitely a shift in that mainstream
Hmm.
segment of culture around whether or not financial literacy is cool. There's more of a push to get educated, or if not get educated, definitely to embrace like this flipping culture.
Yeah.
I think it's a double-edged sword though, because you're hopping on the hype train because you see people making gains, right? Like they're investing in the stock market and they're showing what their returns look like, but you're not getting holistic financial education, and so you're not understanding the implications that come with those capital gains from a tax perspective. You're not understanding the risk that comes with putting your last into the stock market or into cryptocurrency or whatever, because you don't understand the culture of risk management or due
Mhm.
diligence. You're just hopping on the hype train. So
Yeah.
I struggle in this space when it comes to the popular culture talking about financial literacy, because it makes my heart smile to see that young people especially, but really everybody wanting to get into a little slice of the pie. But I'm restricted from an ethical perspective, and even from a um I wouldn't say regulatory, because I'm not bound by any licenses, but just as an educated person in the space, from giving like real cut and dry advice around what stocks should somebody buy, or how much should they put into this or that. And whereas I'm withholding that information because I care,
Mhm.
there are people who are very irresponsible, who are literally posting ticker symbols like Meek Mill on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and then people are running to buy without doing their due diligence, getting burned. And so then you have to struggle with what is the aftermath of that. How do you navigate the bad taste that somebody has in their mouth because they you know dove in head first with their entire retirement, or whatever, and they got burned, and now they never want to do it again.
Yeah. So there are several things that you said that I just really love. One of them that I know to be true, but I don't think I've ever heard somebody say it like that, in terms of there is a black elite that probably had wealth, or a serious amount of wealth, for multiple generations. And for them, financial literacy is like breathing air. And so, I fully agree. There is a black elite that has known what it means to build wealth, whether that is through the stock market, through real estate, or through business creation. And we never really hear about that aspect of it. Maybe because, those folks potentially move in silence sometimes. But, it's interesting to know that they are out there. And one of my things is always feeling, because, I came from poverty as well, living in which was just normal to me. And I say it as poverty looking back at where I came from, but it was just life back then, a life that I loved and thoroughly enjoyed. But living in a one-bedroom apartment with my mom and three brothers, all of us on in the same room, multiple bunk beds. And so, working since the age of probably 12, before off the books, before I'm even able to work, and so, I know what that life was like, that poverty life. And my hope and prayer is that, not because I didn't enjoy everything about my childhood, because I love my childhood, and that's the crazy part about it. But I do hope that, and plan to make sure that my child or my children become a part of that community that always have lived and breathed financial literacy. And I think that's one of the reason, and so that's one aspect of the culture, um, but not necessarily the aspect of the culture that we think about. I think that the aspect that we think about often is the other one that you mentioned, with celebrities, ball players, athletes, musicians, those folks actually talking about financial literacy now. And me personally, I think, like you said, it could be dangerous, but I think it's a good thing, similar to how I invested in, let's say, Twitter back in 2013, and it went nowhere. And I invested a lot of single stocks back then when I first learned about investing, that didn't perform well, and overall didn't make much money from it, just to be frank, back then. But one of the things that I would say is that learning experience of getting invested into the stock market, learning how to invest, why to invest, those experiences, even though I didn't necessarily make money, and I would say I was fortunate, because a lot of people will lose money, and I wasn't able to lose a lot of money either. But I learned that, you are able to build wealth through the stock market, and have built since then a serious amount of wealth in the stock market. But, just being introduced to it was where I started. And that's where I hope, at the very least, people get the start, because and I know he wouldn't mind sharing this, and if he does, so be it. My brother, when he left his last job, he took, obviously he wanted to transfer the 401k, his 401k, and he was going to take all the money out and invest in a single stock. And I was like, that's probably not the best approach for your 401k or that funds. It'll probably be best to put it in the S&P 500 index. And just knowing that I was his older brother and I do this stuff more for a living so than he does, he listened to me. But and I think that's that risk management portion of it.
Right.
All of your funds shouldn't be going to these super risky investments, especially where people are investing in Dogecoin or cryptocurrencies, which I'm also invested in, but with a very, very small percentage of my wealth, let's say 1 to 2%. And I think that's where it can really trip people up, because you may see someone put $10,000 in Dogecoin and think that they're doing something, but that person has $1 million in the bank, and that is just money they're playing with. Where you
Right.
put $10,000 or $5,000 or $1,000 in Dogecoin, and that is the entire life savings there. And that's the piece that a lot of people aren't being educated on, that everyone is in a different lane right now, and most people should be trying to first start with the basics before jumping into the deep high risk investment strategies. And it's hard to get that from a meme stock. And
Right.
so and that's a larger conversation. Someone will probably have to make it about 40, 50 minutes into our conversation and even to hear that part. So it has to be someone that is serious about building wealth. And similar to you, when people ask me where to put their money, I always tell them to invest in the S&P 500 index. Not because I think it's going to be the highest grossing, because I could probably tell them Apple, which may be almost, pretty safe investment that will probably over time have them get a better return that I still feel fairly confident about. But I know investing in the S&P 500 index for the average person during those seasons where the market really tanks can make the difference between them actually sticking with them and actually running and losing a whole lot of money. And so, like you mentioned, there's a whole lot to learn in this financial literacy thing. But I hope where people get the start, even if they get their start on Robinhood, even if they get their start investing in a stock like Coinbase and losing some money, I hope they graduate to the place where they're looking at more stable forms of investments, which has traditionally shown to build long-term wealth and more stable companies. But I've never been one to critique where someone starts, because we all start somewhere, and I think that part of it is a beautiful thing. But some people are going to learn by losing a lot of money, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
But they have people like you out there doing this good work to educate them. And so I guess, as a financial coach, what's one of the things that most people try to come to you or usually come to you for?
So I shared this recently with someone. Maybe it was on a podcast, or maybe it was just kind of a private conversation. But I would say 90% of the work that I do with clients is mindset work. So I'm not talking about money 90% of the interaction. I'm talking about what is your mindset? What is your beliefs around money? What are your fears and your anxieties? Are you guilty? Like, do you feel guilt around spending on yourself? Do you feel guilt around not spending on others? Really, what are the mental roadblocks that you have, or emotional roadblocks that you have towards, or rather that prevent you from going out and exhibiting these disciplines and these behaviors? I find, financial literacy content is plentiful. You can do a Google search on just about anything. And there's strategies up there. People learn how to trade options. People learn, how to invest in the stock market. And the other day, I literally was on Reddit. Um, Reddit taught me how to write an options contract on the investment platform that I use. So I use Merrill Lynch. how to write an options contract. And I'm just like, all right, cool, like literally step by step.
Hmm.
So, financial literacy, or rather knowing how to execute on these strategies, there's not an issue around, there's not a lack of, resources. The mindset that it takes to, like you said, weather some of those storms, or exercise restraint in, dumping your entire life savings into something risky because, you're gambling, you're playing roulette, you're betting on red, and hopefully it lands on, hopefully it lands on red and doesn't land on black. But
Hmm.
um, helping people to see what is an investment versus what is gambling. I got a lot of heat one day. I made a tweet that said that trading is not investing,
Hmm.
because a lot of day
Talk
traders,
about it
they're
now.
like,
Talk about it. Don't hurt no feelings. Don't hurt no feelings.
I got a lot of heat because a lot of people, that like that's how they make their money. They're like, it is investing, it's just short term, and I'm just like, but it's not. You're flipping. That's what you're doing. You're flipping. You could do that with anything. You're getting in, you're getting out. The problem with that is like you're trying to time the market, and you can't time the market. And sometimes the market does things that we can't explain.
Mhm.
Um, like you said, Dogecoin. There's no reason in the world why, the people that are becoming,
Mhm.
I won't say wealthy, but are generating, a lot of value through Dogecoin. It doesn't make sense from a traditional view because it's a meme currency. It was created as a joke. But everybody's hearing about it and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon and they're buying and they're selling, and some people are making money and some people are not. So I like to address the mindset that says, I want to execute on this, right?
Mhm.
And if I'm going to be very transparent, right, I think the exact dollar amount was like $50 or
Mhm.
$55 or something like that. I bought Dogecoin in Robinhood with $50, and that was play money, right? It wasn't my life savings, but immediately after buying it, I said, I know better than this, right?
Mhm.
Like I know better than this. So I went back and I executed a sell. I think I executed a sell at maybe a couple of cents higher than what it is that I
Mhm.
bought in at. So I made some money, but not like a life-changing amount. And then shortly after that, Dogecoin does this huge run up, right? And I was like, damn, like I should have held on to it. But at the same time, like, that's that FOMO, like that's the fear of missing out. Because everybody is on my timelines, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, talking about how much money they made with Dogecoin. And I'm just like, all right, cool, like I'll let you have that win. Meanwhile, I've been investing in a company like Apple, right? You talk about Apple since 2016, right? So I've seen the split. I have no problem sharing that I own cumulatively across all of my investment accounts over 600 shares of Apple.
Mhm.
So, like who's really winning, right? Somebody runs it up on Dogecoin based off of whatever side portion of their money they put into it. But I have been adhering to a consistent strategy over the course of years,
Mhm.
weathering market fluctuations and outside noise telling me to sell everything that you have because Apple is going to tank.
Mhm.
And, now looking, X number of years into the future, I'm sitting on significant gains within the
Mhm.
stock, regardless of what it does.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think there's this famous line from an interview Warren Buffett did, and the interviewer asking Warren Buffett, "Your investment strategy is so simple. Why don't more people just copy you and become rich?" And he said, "Because nobody wants to get rich slowly."
Right.
And there's that concept of, he didn't build his empire over 10 days or a year or even 5 years. He built it really from investing in companies that were low and waiting sometimes several years. BYD, for example, a company that Warren Buffett had vested about 10 years ago, stayed at like $2 for about 10 years, and now it was trading over $40. So made multiple billions of dollars off of that investment, but that was a 10-year um, play,
I
and
do.
no one wants to get rich in that manner where you're letting your money sit in a company and it's not running up 1,000%, 2,000% every month day. Similar to you, I invested $100 in Dogecoin um, back in January. So a little before the hype train really came into it, because I knew a hype train was coming. I knew a hype train was
Hmm.
coming, and you never know. You can still lose all your money and still gain your money. But one of the things I say I'm a relatively low risk investor, and so the same day that I invested in Dogecoin, that $100 it ran up 300%. And so I took back my $100 because I said, at least I know I'm not losing anything on the table. And I let
Right.
that $100, the rest of the coin sat in there. And I'm up over 1,000. Last time I checked, 15,000%. But and if I kept that $100, I would be up probably double that. Uh,
Right.
you know, but at the same time, it doesn't matter to me because I'm a play it safe type of investor, because my goal is to get rich over the long term, not necessarily get rich over something like Dogecoin. Now
Right.
if I leave that money in there and over the next 5 years somehow some way it grows, cool. If it goes away, cool. That's not my wealth building strategies. And I also always try to tell people that it's okay to throw $100 here and see what it does, like you went to the casino. That's fine, but that shouldn't be a part of your strategy to actually build wealth, because that's just gambling. You can't guarantee that to any type of degree. And so
Right.
so I love that part about it, and I love that mindset that you have, because it's truly a wealth building mindset. And I love what you say about working with people on the mentality part of it. There's this quote that is attributed to Dave Ramsey. I don't know if he came up with it, probably not. But financial literacy is 80% behavior and 20% head knowledge. And sometimes when you tell people that is not actual, that may not be involved in financial literacy, it may come off like BS, because it's like, well, I want to learn, how to do options. I want to learn to do this to make quick money, when it's really the behavior aspect portion about it will determine if you actually are able to build wealth in life.
Right.
And so, coming up on time, so I just got this final question to you. What's one piece of advice would you tell someone that's looking to do better with their finances?
Um, I always defer to this piece of advice. It's the way that I close out my TED talk. Just because I think it's so important. Building strategic relationships or building a team is so crucial. Has been so crucial to my success. Whether that's from an encouragement perspective, whether that's from an educational perspective where I'm being taught, or an educational perspective where I'm doing teaching. Um, you know, those things have propelled me forward in a lot of ways, in a lot of different aspects of my personal finance, whether that is, buying a house or building credit, like we talked about, or investing in retirement or investing outside of retirement. Being able to, I always say, a wise man accepts counsel but makes his own decisions. Being able to accept counsel from multiple sources and you know have the financial literacy and empowerment to say, okay, that's a good piece of information. That sounds promising. That sounds risky. This is where I am in my life with my money, with my mentality, with my risk tolerance, with my willingness to do research and due diligence. This is the decision that I'm going to go with. That's going to be the difference, I think, for a lot. I know for a lot of people when it comes to their personal finances and understanding that, just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Just because it works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for me.
Mhm.
And just because it works for you today doesn't mean it's going to work for you tomorrow.
Hmm. That's good. That's good. Well, thank you for your time so much, Rakim. I wish you all the best, God's blessing. I pray that He prospers everything that you do in your life. Do you have any final words for the people? I just want to say, make sure you go check out his book, Financially Irresponsible. I promise you, it is a great read and one of those books where you truly get fresh ideas. Any last words for the people, Rakim?
Yeah, anybody looking for me, my name is pretty unique. So I use that to my advantage. All of my social handles are at Rahkim Sabree. My website is rahkimsabree.com. And you can even Google me, Rahkim Sabree, and a lot of stuff that I put out there, um, as far as publications, as far as podcasts, and those kind of things are free. Definitely consume that content, and I'm very approachable. Send me a DM, comment, whatever, and always looking to build connections.
All right, man. Thanks again. Have a blessed day. And to everyone out there, have a blessed day. I'll see y'all soon.